You're sitting across from her at dinner, she's talking about wedding venues, and something inside you screams to run. But you don't run. You smile, you nod. You pretend you're excited about spending the next 40 years with someone who will inevitably change into a person you don't recognize. Society calls this maturity. Machiavelli would call it the greatest act of self-betrayal a man can commit. Today, we're exposing why marriage has become the modern man's most sophisticated psychological trap. A prison built not with bars, but with expectations. Not with chains, but with guilt. And most dangerously, not by force, but by your own hand. What Machiavelli understood about power 5 centuries ago applies perfectly to the marriage trap today. And once you see it, you'll never look at a wedding ring the same way again. Before we dive into this brutal truth that most men discover only after signing the papers, I need you to understand something. This isn't about hating women or rejecting love. This is about power dynamics, strategic thinking, and understanding the game before you make a move that can't be undone. Machiavelli wrote The Prince as a manual for maintaining power in a world full of people trying to take it from you. Marriage is that same battlefield dressed up in white lace and promises. And right now, wherever you are in the world, you need to hear this message. Drop a comment below and tell me what city you're watching from, because this truth transcends borders, cultures, and languages. The marriage trap works the same way in New York as it does in Tokyo, in London as it does in São Paulo. Niccolò Machiavelli understood something fundamental about human nature that makes people uncomfortable even today. He understood that most institutions, most traditions, most social structures exist not to serve the individuals within them, but to serve power itself. Marriage is no exception. When Machiavelli looked at political alliances, he saw transactions disguised as partnerships. When we look at modern marriage through Machiavellian eyes, we see the same thing. A transaction where one party gives up freedom, resources, and autonomy in exchange for something that sounds valuable but delivers far less than advertised. Society, the state, the economic system, they all benefit enormously from married men. But does the man himself benefit? That's the question nobody wants you to ask. Let's start with the most basic Machiavellian principle. Never give up power unless you're getting more power in return. Every transaction should strengthen your position, not weaken it. Now apply this to marriage. What does a man give up when he marries? He gives up sexual freedom, the ability to pursue other women without guilt or consequences. He gives up financial autonomy. His income becomes shared income. His debts become shared debts. His financial decisions require approval or at least consideration of another person's desires. He gives up time sovereignty. His schedule must accommodate another person's needs, desires, and social obligations. He gives up geographical freedom. He can't just move to another city or country on a whim because someone's life is now entangled with his. He gives up the freedom to take risks, to quit the soul-crushing job, to start the risky business, to pursue the unconventional path, because stability matters more when someone else depends on your income. Now, what does he get in return? Companionship, which he could have without marriage. Sex, which statistically declines dramatically after marriage and even more so after children. Emotional support, which quality friendships can provide without legal contracts. Social approval, which only matters if you're living for other people's opinions rather than your own authentic desires. The promise of someone being there in old age, which divorce statistics suggest is far from guaranteed. When you lay it out like a Machiavellian ledger, the transaction looks absolutely terrible. You're giving up concrete, tangible freedoms in exchange for abstract promises that may or may not materialize and can be revoked at any time by the other party. No skilled negotiator would ever accept these terms, yet millions of men accept them every year without even analyzing what they're agreeing to. Machiavelli would tell you that this is by design. The marriage trap isn't an accident. It's a carefully constructed system that serves everyone except the man entering it. The state benefits because married men are more compliant, more predictable, more invested in maintaining the status quo. They pay more taxes. They don't cause social disruption. They're too exhausted from domestic obligations to question authority or organize politically. Employers benefit because married men, especially those with children, are easier to control. They can't quit, they can't demand better conditions, they can't take sabbaticals to find themselves. They need that paycheck desperately, which means they'll tolerate almost anything. The consumer economy benefits because married couples buy houses, furniture, appliances, cars, insurance, all the products that keep the economic machine running. A single man living in a small apartment spending money on experiences rather than possessions is a terrible consumer. A married man with a mortgage and kids is a profit center. Even the woman benefits in ways that the man doesn't, and Machiavelli would want you to see this clearly without sentimentality clouding your judgment. In most modern marriages, the woman gains access to the man's income and earning potential while maintaining legal protections that didn't exist in previous eras. If the marriage fails, which it does more than half the time, she's likely to receive alimony, child support if there are children, possibly half or more of assets accumulated during the marriage, and often custody of children, which ensures continued financial support. The risk-reward calculation for marriage is completely different for men than for women, which is precisely why women generally push for marriage more than men do. They're responding rationally to incentives. The man who doesn't see this is like a prince who doesn't understand that his advisors have their own agendas. Machiavelli would call him naive at best, foolish at worst. Here's where the trap gets truly sophisticated, truly Machiavellian in its psychological manipulation. The marriage trap doesn't present itself as a trap. It presents itself as the ultimate expression of love, commitment, and maturity. Society has built an entire mythology around marriage that makes questioning it seem like a character defect. If you're hesitant about marriage, you must be afraid of commitment. If you prefer to stay single, you must be immature or damaged. If you analyze marriage as a transaction, you must be unromantic and cold. This is brilliant social engineering because it makes critical thinking about marriage taboo. You're not allowed to analyze it rationally without being accused of not believing in love. But Machiavelli understood that love and strategy aren't opposites. In fact, failing to think strategically about the most important contracts you'll ever enter is the opposite of love. It's stupidity disguised as romance. The marriage trap works through several specific mechanisms that Machiavelli would recognize immediately as classic power plays. First, there's the escalation of commitment. You start dating, everything is voluntary and revocable. Then you move in together, now you're financially entangled but still technically free. Then comes the engagement. Now you've made a public commitment and backing out means social consequences. Then the wedding. Now it's legally binding and exiting costs money and reputation. Then children. Now you're tied together for life regardless of how you feel about each other. Each step seems small. Each step seems natural. But each step removes more of your freedom while making it harder to reverse course. This is how you trap someone without them realizing they're being trapped. You make them complicit in their own imprisonment by having them choose each step voluntarily, while never showing them the full picture of where these steps lead. Second, there's the manipulation through social proof. Everyone is getting married, therefore marriage must be good. Your friends are married, your parents were married, successful people get married, happy people get married. This is the herd mentality that Machiavelli warned princes never to follow. Just because everyone is doing something doesn't mean it's strategically sound. In fact, often the opposite is true. The crowd follows paths that benefit the system, not themselves. The individual who thinks independently, who analyzes situations based on his own interests rather than collective behavior, that's the one who maintains power. But marriage culture uses social proof relentlessly. You're bombarded with images of happy couples, romantic proposals, beautiful weddings, until your brain starts believing that marriage equals happiness despite all evidence to the contrary. Third, there's the artificial time pressure. Women's biological clocks, societal expectations about marrying before a certain age, the fear of being alone, the sense that if you don't lock this relationship down now, you'll lose your chance at happiness. This manufactured urgency forces men to make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. Machiavelli would tell you that decisions made under pressure are almost always bad decisions. A skilled negotiator never lets himself be rushed into a contract. Yet marriage culture is designed to rush you. The engagement needs to happen within a certain time frame. The wedding needs to happen while you're still young. The children need to come before you're too old. There's always some reason why you need to decide now rather than taking years to think it through. And that urgency is a red flag. Good deals don't require artificial time pressure. Good deals can withstand scrutiny and patience. Let's talk about what happens after the trap closes, after the wedding, when reality sets in. Machiavelli wrote about how princes maintain power once they have it, but he also wrote about how princes lose power, and the lessons apply perfectly to marriage. You lose power slowly, incrementally, through small concessions that seem reasonable in isolation but compound into total loss of autonomy. She doesn't like your friends, they're a bad influence, so you see them less often. She wants to move closer to her family, it's just practical, so you relocate away from your support network. She thinks you should save more money, be more responsible, so you stop taking risks and pursuing ambitious ventures. She needs help with housework, with childcare once kids arrive, so your time for hobbies and personal development evaporates. Each individual concession seems small, seems like compromise, seems like what a good partner does. But the cumulative effect is the systematic dismantling of everything that made you an independent man with your own identity. And here's the truly insidious part. You're not allowed to notice this happening. If you point out that you've given up your friends, your hobbies, your ambitions, you're being selfish. If you express resentment about how your life has changed, you're not appreciating what you have. If you dare suggest that maybe marriage wasn't such a great deal for you, you're being ungrateful, immature, or worst of all, a bad husband. The trap includes its own defense mechanism that punishes you for recognizing that you're trapped. Machiavelli would appreciate the elegance of this. It's a prison where the inmates are required to pretend they're free and happy, and any inmate who points out the bars is punished by the other inmates for disrupting the collective delusion. The modern divorce industry adds another layer to this trap that Machiavelli would find fascinating. Marriage comes with an exit clause, divorce. But that exit clause is so financially and emotionally devastating for men that it functions more as a threat than an actual option. Consider the game theory here. Once married, the woman holds significantly more power in the relationship because she can initiate divorce and likely come out financially better than she went in, especially if there are children. The man, on the other hand, knows that divorce probably means losing half his assets, paying ongoing alimony, losing his children to a custody arrangement that favors mothers, and starting over financially while still supporting his previous family. This asymmetrical risk creates an asymmetrical power dynamic. She can threaten to leave, and it's a real option. He can threaten to leave, but they both know he has far more to lose. Machiavelli understood that whoever has less to lose in a negotiation has more power. In modern marriage, that's usually not the man. This power imbalance shows up in thousands of small ways that married men learn not to talk about because admitting them feels like admitting failure. Who decides how money is spent? Often her, or at least she has veto power over his spending in ways he doesn't have over hers. Who decides social plans? Her preferences tend to dominate because keeping her happy is essential to domestic peace. Who decides where you live, how your home is decorated, how you spend holidays? The man who's honest will tell you he gave up most of his preferences years ago because fighting about them wasn't worth the consequences. The consequence isn't just an argument, it's withdrawal of affection. It's days or weeks of tension in the home. It's the implied threat that if he's too difficult, she could end it and take half of everything with her. Living under constant threat, even implied threat, is not freedom. It's a hostage situation with better furniture. Machiavelli wrote that it's better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. In marriage, men are taught to be loved at the expense of being respected. They're taught that a good husband is agreeable, accommodating, willing to sacrifice his desires for harmony. But what Machiavelli understood is that people don't respect those who consistently subordinate their own interests. They might love them in the sense of appreciating their usefulness, but they don't respect them. And without respect, you have no real power. The married man who's given up everything to be a good husband often finds that his wife doesn't respect him anymore. She might appreciate the sacrifices, but she's not attracted to someone with no backbone, no independent identity, no life outside of serving her and the family. This is the cruelest irony of the marriage trap. The very things you're told will make your marriage successful, endless compromise, putting her needs first, being agreeable. These are the same things that erode attraction and respect. You're set up to fail from the beginning. Now let's talk about children, because that's where the marriage trap becomes truly inescapable. Machiavelli understood hostages. Throughout history, rulers would exchange hostages to ensure compliance with treaties and agreements. Your children are your hostages in marriage. Once you have children with someone, you're tied to that person forever, regardless of how toxic the relationship becomes. Even if you divorce, you're still co-parenting, still negotiating, still seeing this person at every significant event in your children's lives. And because courts heavily favor mothers in custody arrangements, your access to your own children becomes contingent on her goodwill and the court's schedule. You could be the best father in the world, but if she decides to move across the country with your kids, there's often little you can do about it. You'll see your children on holidays and summer vacations while she shapes their daily reality. Your children are leverage used to ensure your compliance, your continued financial support, your permanent connection to a relationship that may have died years ago. The men who understand this trap before entering it, who see marriage clearly through Machiavellian eyes, they face enormous social pressure to ignore what they see. Their mothers tell them marriage is wonderful. Their married friends tell them marriage is worth it. Though notably, these same friends often complain constantly about their marriages in private. Their girlfriends tell them marriage won't change anything. It's just a piece of paper. Though if it's just a piece of paper, why does she need it so badly? Society tells them that refusing marriage means refusing to grow up, refusing responsibility, refusing to be a real man. The pressure is immense because the system needs men to continue entering the trap. If men collectively recognized what a bad deal marriage has become for them and refused to participate, the entire social structure would have to change. So the system uses shame, guilt, and social pressure to prevent that recognition from spreading. But more men are waking up. Marriage rates are declining across the developed world. Men are staying single longer, avoiding commitment, or choosing alternative relationship structures that don't involve legal contracts. Society calls this a crisis: the marriage crisis, the commitment crisis, the failure of modern men to step up. But what if it's not a crisis? What if it's the rational response to a bad deal finally being recognized as a bad deal? Machiavelli would call it the market correcting itself. When you change the terms of a contract to heavily favor one party, the other party eventually stops signing. That's not failure, that's intelligence. That's men finally doing the cost-benefit analysis they should have been doing all along, and reaching the obvious conclusion. The question isn't why fewer men are getting married. The question is why any informed man would still choose to enter a legal contract that gives him no real benefits he couldn't get without the contract, exposes him to massive financial risk, strips away his freedom incrementally, and can be unilaterally terminated by the other party, while leaving him financially responsible for years or decades. If any other contract had these terms, if your employer or your bank or your car dealer offered you a contract this one-sided, you'd laugh them out of the room. But because this contract is called marriage and comes wrapped in romance and social approval, men sign it every day without reading the fine print. Machiavelli's entire philosophy was about reading the fine print, about understanding the real terms of engagement rather than the official story. The real terms of modern marriage are absolutely terrible for men, and pretending otherwise because it's uncomfortable to admit is exactly the kind of thinking Machiavelli spent his life warning against. So what's the alternative? Machiavelli would tell you to maintain your power by never voluntarily giving it away. Stay single and enjoy relationships without legal entanglement. Cohabitate if you want companionship, but avoid the legal contract that turns a voluntary relationship into a binding obligation. Have children if you want to be a father, but understand that marriage doesn't improve your chances of being a good father. And divorce probably makes you a worse one by limiting your access. Build your wealth, invest in yourself, Maintain your autonomy and refuse to accept deals that don't serve your interests just because everyone else is accepting them. The man who thinks strategically about his life, who maintains his freedom and resources, who doesn't fall for social pressure disguised as destiny, that man isn't trapped. That man is free in a way that married men can only remember being. The marriage trap works because it convinces you that you're choosing it freely. It works because society has successfully reframed a terrible deal as a romantic milestone. It works because questioning it makes you seem defective rather than thoughtful. But Machiavelli's entire philosophy was about seeing past the official narratives to the underlying power dynamics. When you look at marriage through that lens, when you analyze it as Machiavelli would analyze any political alliance or power arrangement, the trap becomes obvious. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to believing that marriage is about love when you understand it's about power. You can't accept the framing that it's about commitment when you understand it's about control. You can't pretend it's a partnership when you understand one partner has all the exit options and the other has all the obligations. This doesn't mean you can't love someone. It doesn't mean you can't build a life with someone. It means you do it on terms that don't destroy your autonomy, your resources, and your freedom. Machiavelli understood that you can care about people while still protecting your own interests. In fact, failing to protect your own interests makes you weak, and weakness ultimately helps no one. A strong, free, autonomous man has far more to offer a relationship than a man who's given up everything and become resentful and depleted. The marriage trap doesn't create strong men and happy families. It creates exhausted men going through the motions, relationships held together by obligation rather than genuine desire, and children who grow up watching their father slowly disappear into a role rather than remain a person. The modern marriage trap is perfectly designed to appear voluntary, while being nearly impossible to escape once entered. That's what makes it such a brilliant trap. Machiavelli would admire the sophistication even while warning men to avoid it at all costs. 500 years ago, he warned princes about how to maintain power in a world of competing interests. Today, that same wisdom warns men about how to maintain power in a social system designed to extract everything from them while giving back as little as possible. The man who enters marriage without understanding these dynamics is like a prince who enters an alliance without understanding that his allies want his kingdom. He's not being romantic, he's being reckless. And the consequences of that recklessness play out over decades of a life that could have been so much more. Now that you understand why marriage is the modern man's trap of the mind, why Machiavelli would tell you to protect your power at all costs, I want you to drop a comment right now and write, "I keep my power." Those 4 words are your declaration that you see through the trap, that you're thinking strategically about your life instead of following the script society wrote for you. Type those words in the comments because saying it publicly is how you solidify the understanding in your own mind. And after you do that, subscribe to this channel immediately because we're building something important here. A community of men who refuse to be trapped by social conditioning and pretty lies. That subscribe button represents your commitment to staying awake, to keep learning these truths that most men discover too late. Click it now, don't wait, because the next video builds on everything you just learned. What's coming next goes even deeper into the mechanisms of control that modern society uses to keep men compliant and serving systems that don't serve them back. We're exploring territory that makes people uncomfortable, truths that most channels are afraid to speak because they challenge everything you've been told about how life should work. You've already taken the first step by watching this video all the way through. Now take the next step and make sure you never miss what we're revealing next. This journey into real freedom, into genuine power, into living strategically rather than reactively, this is just beginning, and everything you thought you knew about success and happiness is about to be completely transformed.